Hey everyone, this is Case coming in before the episode to note that we recorded this several months ago, and so during the episode, because we're talking about Marvel and DC crossovers, we bring up the big re-release of JLA versus Avengers, which of course was drawn by George Perez. At the time when we recorded this, he was still alive. In fact, I don't think the book had been re-released yet. But of course, since then he has passed away, as have several major people in the comics industry this year. Obviously, Neil Adams we lost right before George, and I'm actually recording this on the day that they announced that Tim Sale has passed away. So a lot of people who made their mark, and it's very sad. And I don't want anyone to think that we weren't paying our proper respects to such a legend in the field. But this is a really good episode, and I hope you enjoy it.
You're right. This is fantasy football. He's got all the names up there on the whiteboard.
Oh, yeah,
and they're like,
totally.
Yes. Here we go. This is how we're going to do this. Give me all the names from all the superheroes that we have and put them together.
Larry Hama had the first pick, and he's like, I take Wolverine.
And Chuck Dixon's like, you guys know I'm Chuck Dixon, right? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, okay. Well, how about this? He can take Wolverine. You get Bruce Wayne.
Boom. Look at that.
Welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, J. Mike Folson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to have everyone here for this conversation, because today we're looking at an event 25 years in the past that still resonates with us all. Today we're talking about the Amalgam comic line. And to do that, we are joined by Mitch Punpayuk.
Hi, everyone. The fact that you said that it resonates with everyone is like, I remember this so well from back then. At least I thought I did until I reread it for this. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot in here that I don't remember, and it's not all good.
No, there's definitely some clunkers in this all. It resonates because it's ideas. Like, I think we all are like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Wolverine and Batman or Darkclaw. That's fun to describe.
I feel like that's the biggest one that most people remember too, is Darkclaw.
Yeah, that and Spider-Boy, I think I see a lot of people talk about.
I feel like I would have thought about this back then because I think I was 7 when this came out. And this is something that I would have had in my head. Well, it would have sure been cool if Batman and Wolverine had gotten together. Or Superman and Captain America got together and made a new hero. That would have been right up my alley back then.
Oh, yeah. I remember back when these were coming out, like before it came out, they announced that Amalgam was coming, and there was like a little bit of a moment of like, wait, is this going to be a thing? Like, is this going to be a real thing? Like, because it was being presented as like, oh, all the lines are merging, and it's going to be a Spider-Boy book instead of a Spider-Man and a Superboy book. And obviously that was never really in the cards, but like I was like 11, so it didn't sound impossible.
It could happen.
So I have to ask, Kay, since I usually go to you for like kind of comic book historian stuff, like what was going on in the actual Marvel and DC universes at this time? Did these all come out in 1 month, or?
Yeah. So what? There's the crossover that we'll talk about, which is the Marvel versus DC book, which most notably had everyone vote for the big lineup characters, like 6 or 7 matches that were like considered like the heavyweights in this all. And that section, there was a lot of hype about it. And then the actual Amalgam books were what's called 5th week events. So in months that have 5 Wednesdays, because of the distribution models that comics used to be under, and they're kind of shifting away now, but like used to be under a model of like every Wednesday comics are released, and comics are actually set up to be on a 4-week month schedule, or like a 4 Wednesday schedule. So if there's a 5th Wednesday in the month, just by how like the month is distributed, usually it causes a gap in like some books' publication cycles, because it comes out on like the 1st Wednesday of the month or the 2nd Wednesday of the month, not necessarily like every 4 or 5 weeks. And so there's all these, oftentimes there are events, and if you think about them, a lot of those, like, here's an event that has like a mini series and then a bunch of one shots tied to it, are usually 5th week events. Because it's a gap in the respective books coming out. So the Amalgam stuff was 5th week, and then the following year they did the Return to Amalgam stuff, and that was also like a 5th week event.
I loved 5th week events. Like Legends of the Dead Earth was one of my favorites too.
Yeah. Tangent, we'll have to talk about at some point on the show.
Yeah.
Because in that series, the Atom is their version of Superman.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was a fun exercise at the time, and it's one that probably couldn't happen now with Disney owning Marvel. But at the time, it was like, all right, yeah, we'll have a lot of fans vote on a bunch of stuff. It's the same summer as Batman and Robin coming out. We're all like excited about like superhero stuff. It's all fun, and then we're going to do a bunch of one shots where all the characters are merged together in weird and goofy ways. And Wizard Magazine is going to love Darklaw, and that's going to be the big thing.
So speaking of like, I'm gonna say it's probably about 5 years ago now. When I went to the Comic-Con in Phoenix, Ron Mars was there, and I had asked him some questions about this. And one of the things that he said was that this could never happen again unless comic books sales were going really, really down, because that's what it was back then. He said the reason why they did this, or why they mandated him to do it, was that comic book sales on both sides were just really low.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is the time of the Marvel bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And I imagine DC was also a little bit on a downswing, because this is in the wake of like the big boom surrounding like the speculator market, with things like the death of Superman, and like lots of people like buying first issues. Like, Image Comic came out, and there was like all these like huge sellers. And then this is a couple years later, after a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I just put a bunch of money into these comics. Why aren't they worth the same amount as Action Comics #1? and we're like, oh, that's not how it works. Oh, shit.
Damn.
Although, weirdly, these books are now kind of becoming like that. Like, I have all the single issues, but like they're not doing a digital reprint of these because they're jointly owned by Marvel and DC, and it takes some pulling teeth to get them to do anything together these days. Currently, what just hit the shelves is the reprint, or like the re-release of the Avengers Justice League crossover that George Perez did the artwork for, which was done in light of him having, a pretty lethal diagnosis and only at this point like a couple months left to live.
Right.
That required so much pulling teeth and fundraising just to get like this re-release of a book. It's not even new material. It's just like print some more issues, print some more copies. It's just the legal hurdles and the competitive nature between the two companies is just really a big impediment for any of the sort of like fun creativity going on here. I mean, this is why back in the day, the Squadron Supreme was created, and why the Heroes of Angor, also called the Assemblers, were created, where the editorial wanted to do a crossover, and then the higher ups were like, no, you can't do it. And they had stealth crossovers in the annuals for the Avengers and Justice League. So it's not like these kind of things don't happen every day. And this period of the 90s when, like I said, Marvel was facing off bankruptcy and like was licensing off all their properties for movies and not getting any of the money for those. This is the beginning of that phase, one that would come to a head by the time we get to Iron Man coming out as a movie, like a decade later.
Pharaoh Man. I was like, did Pharaoh Lad grow up in this continuity? And he became Pharaoh Man.
Well, yeah, I mean yeah. So let's talk first about the crossover, because like the crossover I think is at least interesting enough to talk about, but there's not that much to it. Like, it's a pretty basic idea of, all right, we want to do this crossover. We'll represent Marvel and DC as metaphorical space gods. Which they look appropriately Kirby enough. I'm actually pretty happy.
So
with their
Kirby.
And we'll have a person who just bounces back and forth between the realities as the sort of like herald of this whole situation. A character called Axis, who for a little while after this book would actually show up in like random DC and Marvel comics.
Ooh, now, wasn't it always just Ron Mars's books though?
That might be the case, because I'm thinking about Green Lantern issues that were definitely written by Ron Mars.
Green Lantern and Silver Surfer, apparently.
Yeah, and I think I keep saying Marvel versus DC, but it is actually listed as DC versus Marvel.
I thought it was both.
It might. I mean, I'm looking at the cover for the first one and it says DC versus Marvel. It might be that it flips between.
Yeah,
issues.
I think the second one says Marvel DC, and then they keep switching back and forth.
Yeah. So the big thing, and the thing they were hyping, because they had like a little preview issue that had like your voting ballot for for the big fights. So they had Superman versus Hulk, they had Spider-Man versus Superboy, they had Batman versus Captain America, they had Wolverine versus Lobo, and they had Storm versus Wonder Woman. And every single one of these fights brings up so many arguments online now because this was a popularity contest. And so,
yeah,
like some of them you're like, okay, yeah, Superman beats Hulk. Fine. That's like, I don't think anyone's like too upset about that outcome. But notably Wolverine versus Lobo, like Wolverine's a very popular character. Lobo is a parody of a very popular character. Not a lot of people know that like Lobo can fight Superman to a standstill and has been kicked out of hell for being too much of an asshole. So
Yeah.
like they have Wolverine like get up from the fight, and like all the fights that are voted on are the art has been released for the other outcome, and it's basically the same thing up until like the last two panels where it's like, oh yeah, Hulk gets up and beats Superman, or Lobo and Wolverine go behind the bar and like Wolverine's the one that gets up. So we just, like, because they were prepping these very close to actually getting the ballots, they had to have everything kind of finished. The same way with when they did the vote for the Death in the Family arc.
Yep.
Yeah, for Jason Todd. Yeah.
Can you think of any other situations where they did voting like this other than the Death in the Family and this?
Death in the Family was notable for being the first. This was, many years later. I'm sure there have been others, but this is the only other one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything either. I'm trying to rack my brain without Googling it, but yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there are others, but like they probably weren't big ticket events. Like the vote was probably the thing to try to draw attention to it, and in retrospect, because the canonicity of a thing that the audience votes on feels suspect to begin with. Probably a lot of people just kind of choose to ignore them or move on with their lives. Killing Robin's a big one. Like that's a pretty big event,
right?
But these votes, like no one acknowledges in terms of like who would actually win. Like, because obviously Wolverine can't beat Lobo. Like that's just not the scale that we're dealing with.
So let me ask you this, the both of you, like, if they were to have done this now, would these be the matchups that we would have saw for the first,
absolutely
the big five?
These matchups are like such weird struggling ones. Like you got like this is the time when the Avengers was not a popular book. Like none of these are like what we would consider the major Marvel characters aside from I shouldn't say that because like Spider-Man, it just feels like weird matchups though. Like Wolverine's popular, but would Lobo be the person you'd match him up against necessarily?
Probably not.
I mean, you would imagine it would be like Captain Marvel against Wonder Woman if they were doing it today.
Yeah.
Like Storm.
Storm would actually beat Wonder Woman, though.
Well, like, why don't we talk about these fights for a second?
Okay, let's talk about them.
I think Superman versus Hulk, I think people being like, yeah, Superman would win. That makes sense. Like, that's fine. Spider-Man versus Superboy, this is like the one time where I'm like, yeah, I could see this fight going Spider-Man's way. Because this is specifically like an era of like the Con-El Superboy before he had any powers besides telekinesis, and he's very new at this point still. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, I kind of get it. And I like this matchup because at this point it's the Ben Reilly Spider-Man, so it's actually clone versus clone, and I dig that part.
Which makes me think that if they did it now, would it be Jonathan versus Miles?
I think that would be a cool fight to see. I think it would. I mean, I imagine they would probably do like Static versus Miles if they were really thinking about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
But just because he has a comic that is like currently running, I'm not actually sure if he would be considered popular enough to face off against Miles.
Like you mean the Son of Superman book?
No, I meant Static. But
Static. Sorry.
Yeah,
gotcha.
That's a good question. Like, who would you pit Son of Superman against?
Sorry, didn't mean to throw a wrench.
No, it's fine because like we're just kind of like spitballing about this a lot. That's a good question. At the moment,
we'll come back to that one.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it would depend if it was young Jonathan or older Jonathan.
Well, I feel like they would do older Jonathan now.
Yeah,
because that's the current
book
version. Yeah,
I miss Super Sons. That was so much fun.
Yeah, I haven't read any of the Son of Superman yet. Like, I just haven't been reading comics though.
I think it's a good book. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It's actually trying to tackle the implications of Superman stuff with a more fallible Superman, and I enjoy that vantage point.
Everything I've seen about it, like tangentially, has been pretty awesome looking. So
anyway, Batman versus Captain America. Honestly, the fight could kind of go either. I personally think that Cap would win in a fight, but like I could also see Batman taking advantage of a situation to win the fight. And this is like a stealthy one in a sewer type thing. So I don't know.
And I would say to me, Batman is it's all about the prep, right? It's the prep time with Batman. So he has he has to know who he's going up against. He doesn't know Captain America. How could he go up against him unless you're like saying like Guardian does the same type of fighting styles and stuff that Captain America does?
I think that Batman could theoretically come in with enough tools on him to take advantage of a situation. Like the fight that they have is like perfectly tailored for Batman to have advantages. Like it's a dark place with lots of hiding. Like if it was a big arena, like he doesn't stand a chance against Captain America. Captain America's a super soldier.
Okay.
Like we know what happens when Batman fights a super soldier like Deathstroke. He loses. That's just what happens.
Yeah. Yep.
And that actually would be the big comparison because Deathstroke is really just an evil version of Captain America with a sword instead of a shield.
Do we get a definitive winner out of that match? Because doesn't like the sewer fill up and then like Axis shows up and interrupts the fight?
Cap technically loses
because of the batarang.
Yeah, the batarang to the head. He's knocked out and Batman saves him right before the end of the fight.
Okay.
Then we get the Wolverine versus Lobo, which I've already said it's ridiculous. It's just the scale is so different between the two of them. Like Lobo is intentionally like, here's the joke about like the grim and gritty like Looney Tunes character versus Wolverine. Like, well, yeah, he's pretty durable. It's just not in that same like category. And there's no like, oh yeah, well, what if he got a lucky shot in? He can't. Lobo can regrow from a cell.
And it's obvious that how unknown or unpopular, like you said, that Lobo is in the second year of Amalgams that they throw him in, like mix him with Howard the Duck. Like, come on.
And then we get Storm versus Wonder Woman. Storm wins, and that's because Wonder Woman was at a bit of a nadir of her popularity at this point, and Storm is riding high on the X-Men franchise, which the cartoon had been very popular. I think this fight, I don't think anyone's like every now and then I'll see people being like, oh, Wonder Woman totally should have won. And I think generally I'm like, at a range, Wonder Woman loses because Storm has so much stuff to throw at her. Up close, like Wonder Woman's super fast and super strong. I think it could be a toss-up, and it could go either way. And if you're just being pelted with lightning bolts, eventually you're going to go down.
Yeah,
like Storm's an Omega level mutant, and like nowadays, like we're really trying to emphasize that. So like Storm of this era probably required that range. Storm of now, not so much. Like she seems to be able to do pretty damn well. Like anyone who's reading the current X-Men books, where she just like freezes the blood of all the people around her to destroy them, or causes air pressure changes until their heads explode. She's Storm. She's the goddess. So those are the big matches, and then they have lesser matches: Aquaman versus Namor, Elektra versus Catwoman, The Flash versus Quicksilver, Robin versus Jubilee, Silver Surfer versus Green Lantern, and Thor versus Captain Marvel. So these ones all count towards like the ultimate outcome, but it's perfectly designed to make it even split so that the votes actually count for who wins. I don't really have a lot of complaints about these ones. because this one is Ron Mars and Peter David writing it and saying like who would win these fights. So you're like, yeah, all right, Aquaman versus Namor. Namor's pretty tough, but like the DC scale is just so big, and like hits him with a whale.
It's with a whale.
Yeah, Elektra's she's an actual fighter. Catwoman's a thief. Like she does pretty well in a fight, but Elektra's sure. The Flash is so much faster than Quicksilver. It's like, why are you even bothering?
Why are you even here? Go home.
Like the fair fight would be North Star, or Makari, or
Makari, yeah.
Now, those would be different scales, but like Quicksilver's not even particularly fast in the Marvel universe.
North Star is faster than Quicksilver?
By a lot. North Star approaches 99% the speed of light. Quicksilver just barely breaks the speed of sound.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Silver Surfer versus Green Lantern. It's Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, and I love Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, but he's not like the best Green Lantern in terms of like actual combat purposes. Like he's really creative and whatnot versus the Herald of Galactus
with the power cosmic.
Exactly.
I mean, but that is such a good like power base to go up against, like the Green Lantern, ring versus the power cosmic, like two things that could possibly hold each other to a standstill, I would think.
Yeah. Around this time, they were doing a lot of crossovers with Marvel DC stuff. Like there were a bunch of comics that came out, and one included a Silver Surfer Superman crossover where it was a team up of the Impossible Man and Mr. Mxyzptlk. And at the end of this all, Silver Surfer like reversed some of Mr. Mxyzptlk's like fifth dimensional magic, and Superman's like, "You can do that?" And he's just like, "The power cosmic." Yeah,
that's pretty great.
Where were you so many years ago? I could have used you. Keep it from showing up every 3 years, or every 3 months, or something like that.
Robin versus Jubilee. I think this makes enough sense. Robin is actually trained on how to fight. Jubilee has good powers, and she's, you know,
what are her powers exactly?
Fireworks.
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
Well, hey, she can shoot explosives from her fingers. Like that is a thing that I wish I could do.
Yeah, but it's like explosives to the point of fireworks that are really far away. Like, but they're up close. It's more blinding than it is hurt.
More annoying than anything else.
I mean, regardless, it is a projectile she can shoot from her hands, regardless. Like versus a human. So, like,
true.
Sure. If she would like, and archetypally, she fits pretty well. Like she is at this point, she's thoroughly Wolverine's sidekick and works really well as being like, okay, yeah, it's the Robin equivalent. I think that matchup is fine. I think her finding Tim Drake cute is pretty fun. Like just as a detail here, he is a cute boy. J. Mike, you're nodding your head, shaking your head. No, he's president of so many clubs. But obviously, Robin is going to win this fight because he's going to be able to take advantage of the tactical situations. Like that makes so much more sense. And then Thor versus Captain Marvel, this being the Shazam Captain Marvel, this makes enough sense to me that Thor, the trained several thousand-year-old god of thunder and master of war, would do pretty well against Captain Marvel. It's a good fight, and if Captain Marvel was more experienced, I would say would have a chance of winning. Like a serious chance of winning. But at this point, you know, it's still 14-year-old Billy Batson, you know, up against the God of Thunder.
Shouldn't that like not make a difference if he's more experienced because he has the wisdom of Solomon?
Yeah.
I'm just saying in terms of like, so specifically this version is the era of the Jerry Ordway Power of Shazam reinterpretation of the character. So it is a base human child that is being infused with it all and is constantly struggling to hear the correct thing, to like the correct voice of the different gods.
Oh, okay, I got you. So would the better matchup have been Thor versus Black Adam?
That would be an interesting matchup for sure. But I think it's a good matchup either way, and I think it's just Thor has a slight edge by virtue of being a little bit more experienced
and much older.
Yeah, basically. I mean, like you have to have a winner.
Yeah, you have to have a winner. And Peter, like you said, Peter David and Ron Morris sat there and probably discussed it out.
Yeah. Fun fact, this was my first actual encounter with Captain Marvel.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. And this is what caused me to go and read the Power of Shazam graphic novel. Because I was like, oh, this character seems really cool. Actually, this character seems exactly like a character I made up in my head called Captain Lightning when I was 5. So
see?
I was like, holy shit, this is that character.
And didn't at one time they called him Captain Thunder?
Captain Thunder is what they were originally going to call him. And then DC beat them out, or DC beat Fawcett to the punch by having Johnny Thunder, so it was decided to go with Captain Marvel. And also they were just trying to figure out the best like name to sell it all under. And it was going to be Flash Comics, but literally DC beat them with Flash Comics, so they changed it to Wiz Comics and yada yada yada. That's why the first appearance of Captain Marvel is Wiz Comics number 2, because there's actually no Wiz Comics number 1.
I bet you that's a big seller on the resale market.
But the whole mini is just like, the embodiment of Marvel and the embodiment of DC are like, fuck you, and they decide to just fight each other, and then they're like, well, maybe, you know what, one of us might die. What if we just pick representatives of superheroes from our worlds and pit them against each other? That's it. They're
like Super Smash Brothers meets Dragon Ball.
Well, at the end of the 3rd issue, Axis is like, I need to put a pause on this, and he merges the universes together, and we get a fairly cool fusion dance version of the two, or like now is like one like red and blue like space god, and that's pretty cool looking. And then immediately coming back into the next issue, it's just like, yeah, that didn't do anything. Never mind. And they
fights back on, boys.
they reveal the goodness and strength of character of Captain America and Batman to them, and the space gods are like, oh shit, we did pretty good making these guys. We shouldn't fuck them up. Like, well done, brother. And that's it.
Yeah, at the end of the 4th issue, when they're just like, hey, how's it been? Like, come on.
Yeah. But this whole thing was mostly an excuse for us to get to the Amalgam books, because the Amalgam books are such a fun idea. So why don't we talk about the first wave of Amalgam books? We'll also talk about the second wave, but we're going to save that for the second episode on this one. We're not going to be talking about the All Access miniseries that came out because I didn't want to reread those.
There are some good more amalgams in those two volumes, the All Access and Unlimited Access. Just if anybody wants
Unlimited
to go
Access, they like redo a bunch of them, and like there's some like fun moments. There's like Captain America Jr. for Captain Marvel Jr. or Captain America Fusion.
He screams out Uncle Sam to get his powers, which I think is pretty awesome. I want to know what that anagram acronym stands for.
If they had done actual like Amalgam one shots for that one, I probably would like it more. But as it was just sort of like another event for the sake of doing an event. But yeah, let's talk about the first wave of Amalgam books, because those were a lot of fun. And like, I think the ideas are really cool. And this is a Superman show, so why don't we talk about Super Soldier first? So
would you have said these two are the characters that they should merge together?
If you want to have like a seamless kind of fusion between two characters, I think this works really well. I think... Yeah. Like, weirdly, and this is kind of just zeitgeisty stuff, the Amalgam Super Soldier and then his connection to Spider-Boy actually kind of became what was used for Ultimate Comics, with how Spider-Man was like the formula, like the Oz formula that they used for Spider-Man, was an attempt at recreating the Super Soldier Serum for Captain America, and likewise the Hulk, like, which then bled into the MCU stuff. Not so much with Spider-Man, but with like the idea that like Hulk was like an attempt at recreating Cap.
That's literally all Ultimate Comics was like how many different people can try and recreate the Super Soldier Serum, because that's what Giant Man was trying to do. That's what Hulk was, and there was a whole bunch of different people.
Later, it was revealed all the X-Men too.
Yep, they were all
really.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, Ultimate Comics got real weird before they were like, we got to give this one up.
Well, I mean, it's a good idea and a great way to start a universe. But I did not know the thing about the X-Men.
It got bloated and weirder than, like, it was not the streamlined book that anyone could read at a certain point. And once that happened, it was like, well, why are we doing this book anymore? And
just combined it. Hey, the two brothers came together.
Yes, well done, brother. And now it's mostly it's just Miles Morales is still alive, and the Maker, which was the corrupted version of Reed Richards from that reality, is now like wandering around the multiverse as a villain.
Oh, that's true. Those are the only ones that made it over, huh?
I mean, like every now and then you see some allusions to stuff. Like apparently Wolverine's son from that reality has made it over, but we have yet to see him since that occurred.
Since what? X-Men Red or something?
I forget the last time he was seen. Whatever that that crossover. What was it? Was it Contest of Champions? Whatever, the one where they like actually brought Miles over to 616, and then we like in Al Ewing's The Ultimates comic, which was not set in the Ultimates universe. It was
just a name they gave to a team, right?
Yeah, it was a team name that they had with America Chavez, Captain Marvel, Blue Marvel, Spectrum. I always have to check, like, what is Monica Rambeau's current superhero name? And Black Panther. At a certain point, they recreated the Ultimates from the Ultimates book, but they were like constructs created by like cosmic energy. It's a real good book, but it gets real trippy. And the Iron Man from that book actually like links up with this team and like helps them save the world. And it was a good scene. I liked it all, but my understanding is that they weren't like necessarily the original Ultimates so much as like recreations through the power cosmic, because the power cosmic does a lot.
It does everything.
But getting back to Super Soldier, I think that they did a really good job of streamlining all the things about the characters that work really well together. Having the alien base, having it be a solar ray base instead of like Vita rays, I think worked really well for activating his powers. You know, Captain America, truth, justice, and the American way fits pretty well. I think that worked really well. You know, the Red Skull being fused with Lex Luthor as the Green Skull.
Which goes with his kryptonite poisoning, right?
Yeah. So I think that worked really well. I think the stakes they set up of like, there's so much kryptonite radiation in this modern era, making Super Soldier weaker, is very fun. If you wanted to do like, all right, well, how are we going to do our Man of Steel story, or our, like whatever, like it's the 90s, we have to power down Superman a bit because he had gotten too powerful. It creates a fun atmosphere for that. If you want to like have some stakes, have a character who's not as powerful as they used to be, but you could still do some of those like crazy stories and flashbacks. I like it all. I think it does a pretty good job of it. Like Jimmy Olsen sort of filling in, sort of. I mean, Jimmy and Bucky kind of.
Well, because like he had a sidekick though. What was her name? In one of the flashbacks, he had a sidekick, American Belle or something like that.
Liberty Bell.
Oh well, that sort of. That's a fusion of Liberty Bell and Miss America.
Yeah.
So it's an American themed character. I don't know if I would call it a sidekick necessarily, but
because
we don't see enough.
She was a part of the All-Star Winners instead of All-Star Squadron and American Winners, or so. Anyways,
some mix of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the main Super Soldier story, like the one in this run, as opposed to Sentinel of Liberty, the one from, or sorry, Man of War, pardon me, the one from the second round. This one, we deal with Super Soldier having woken up in the modern era, Captain America style, and he gets a job at a newspaper because his old pal Jimmy Olsen is now the head guy and can hook him up real well, and I think that is nice. And then the robot he went down fighting reemerges, and he has to fight him.
Metallo.
Ultra Metallo.
Ultra Metallo, yeah.
Which I've seen people say that it's a fusion of Ultron with Metallo, but I'm like, I don't see it.
That doesn't make sense.
So I don't know. Maybe I guess the Ultra is more like Ultra Humanite, but like also don't really get that.
No.
Like, so I don't know.
But Ultra Humanite isn't that also DC?
Yeah, also true. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what Ultra theme thing. It thoroughly looks like a 40 style robot. Like it looks like the the ones from the Fleischer cartoons, kind of, but chonky because it's got a lot of kryptonite in its chest.
I mean, Super Soldier definitely seems to be more Superman than Captain America to me.
You think? I mean, like the frozen in time element.
Yeah, but like
the fact that it was a 4F soldier.
He's I guess that's true because you're using kryptonite DNA to make the weak person stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I mean, his name is Clark Kent. Yeah.
But
and he's got the powers, and he does have the shield though. Which is pretty cool. And
he's got his costume. I mean, is mostly Captain America, but with trunks. And he's not wearing gloves. And then it's the 90s style. We're gonna have the hair exposed kind of kind of look there.
Okay.
And then the shield is the S shield from is it the one from the rocket? Like, is that where they get the weird metal for the shield?
That was confusing because I didn't see that part in there. I was like, huh.
I don't think they say where they get the shield from.
I don't think so
it's
either.
Just like he's got a shield. But I wonder, was the House of L emblem on the rocket, and they just pried it off, and we're like, this is a pretty good protective thing for it.
I mean, it lasted through space travel. It's got to be pretty indestructible.
Yeah, I think it fits so seamlessly. I don't have a ton to say. Like, this is Mark Waid writing it. Mark Waid is a great Superman and Captain America writer. It's Dave Gibbons on the art. Obviously, people know Dave Gibbons from Watchmen. It's a good team. It's a perfectly fine story. There's the conceit of all these Amalgam books that this is just issue 1 of an ongoing series, and so they all have little bits of bait and ideas for oh yeah, this is where the series is going, and then never to be a thing.
Or the whole, don't you remember from Sentinel of Liberty #4,
right? Yeah.
Whatever. All those little editor's notes. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. Why don't we move on to to the one that everyone brings up every time you talk about this line, which is Dark Claw, specifically Legends of the Dark Claw with Logan Wayne.
Oh man, I don't know if I don't remember if it's the Legends of the Dark Claw book or if it's a different book when the person's someone's breaking into, is it Talia? Someone's breaking into the tower, and the first floor is a bunch of his art, and then it keeps going further and further down.
Oh, it's in this. It's when it's Carol Danvers.
That's right.
Who because at this time she was actually pretty closely related with X-Men books at this point. She was still binary, at this point in the in Marvel Comics. So she hadn't become Warbird yet, and then resumed the Miss Marvel and then Captain Marvel names. So they fuse her with Huntress in this.
Yes, that's right.
And so she breaks in, she finds all this art, and then eventually she's lurking around, and she finds the Dark Claw stuff buried in there. It's very Bronze Age Batman. like when he was like living in Gotham City proper, and he had like a dope condo, kind of like in The Dark Knight, where it's like it's in Wayne Tower, and I've got down below, I've got subway access with my own cave.
So I mean, I've read a lot of Wolverine, but I know there's a lot of Wolverine out there, and I'm just not an expert. But is Wolverine like an artist? Is a painting like bunch of painting? Is that his thing? Is that one of his things?
Not that I'm aware of.
So where does the painting come from?
I think they were just trying to justify him being rich.
Oh.
But I don't even know if that fully makes sense. I don't know. You know, because it's weird. Like talking about Super Soldier, him working at a newspaper makes more sense with like Steve Rogers still, because Steve Rogers was like a cartoonist and like worked for publications at various points. Like he was a comic book artist in his own comics at various times. And him like working as like, you know, at a newspaper is like not that big a stretch. But yeah, like Wolverine working on art, like the only thing I can think of is in X-Men 2, where it's like, what do you teach?
Oh, wow. Okay.
But that's like a couple years later.
Yeah.
So like that's the weird part. Like this comes before a lot of the conventions that we would see in movies, and I'm like, how much is the dog wagging the tail, or the tail wagging the dog? I love the Dark Claw costume, by the way. Like it's so fucking out there and crazy.
It's so 90s too.
Yeah. I love that his claws
90s.
have like the little like cutouts in it to make them look more like bat wings.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the skull mask.
Yeah.
Like it's just where does that even come from?
I think it's supposed to be more of a proper bat kind of face.
It makes sense.
It looks actually pretty similar to the Just Imagine Stan Lee
True,
Batman costume.
it does.
But that's also a couple years later. So I don't know if it's like an illusion, then they just wanted edgy 90s version of Batman combined with Wolverine so that it could be peak marketability.
So was Sparrow, was it Jubilee Drake? Or was she mixed with someone else, or was she just Jubilee?
I mean, she's clearly a Robin hybrid.
Yeah.
I don't know if they specify which, but Tim Drake's the only one that we don't really see in another book.
That's true. We see Jason Todd and Grayson later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm inclined to think it's supposed to be Tim Drake, especially because they were matched up with each other and he was Robin at the time.
Unless they pulled out Carrie.
Yeah, it could also be a Carrie Kelly.
Kelly, that's right, Kelly.
Yeah. But this is before like Spoiler became Robin for a stretch.
Right.
So we hadn't really seen an in canon like female Robin.
True.
So I don't think it really matters too much beyond just like, oh, it's Jubilee plus a Robin.
Right.
And it's probably Tim Drake, but there's like, but the costume looks like the Dick Grayson costume, which is also the Carrie Kelly costume. So
I mean, there are definitely like obvious times where they mix three people together in these books as opposed to just two.
And I typically don't like those as much. Like the times that they do are usually the ones where I'm like, this is kind of clunky, and we'll get to those in the second.
Oh yeah, yeah.
in a second. And then because there's so many writers working on this and like pulling ideas, you get like weird spots where they like a character will be used, then they'll be used again. In a second, we'll talk about Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Because, like, we might as well.
Like,
but just to finish up on this one, I like Hyena. I think it's fun. The actual Joker face part of it is a little weird without the rest of the costume having, like, those colors. But I think the idea is fun. The idea of a hyena villain being, like, the animalistic, like, clown villain is fun.
What a good name, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that part is great. Mm-hmm. And having him be the, you know, like using the Wolverine origin stuff and having it being like, okay, we're both like part of the super soldier program, whatever, you know, Weapon X program, whatever. And the one that is the merciless killer was the success, which is like their Sabretooth in this scenario, but also their Joker, I thought was fun. Something about being a crazy murderer, just running around with an Uzi and also claws, like worked for me. Like I just generally kind of dug this character.
Yeah. Great character.
But I don't have a lot to say about the issue because it's just like, all right, yeah, we bring in a new team member, which is Huntress, the Carol Danvers character. And
yeah, not much happens in the issue, does it?
Let's give a backstory.
Well, they attack Air Force One, and there's like up until like one panel, like almost at the very end, like they're always showing the back of the president, and then it's like, oh nope, that's Bill Clinton, right there.
That was weird.
They were like out of their way to like not show off his face until all of a sudden they weren't. And it was a really strange decision. Because
that's a common thing they do in comic books to try and keep it timeless, right? To always obstruct who the actual president is.
Yeah, especially because like the timing of things have been bad. Like infamously, there was an issue that DC did where Superman had to be at like two places at once, and so he entrusted his identity to President John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. Or pardon me, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Then the issue actually didn't hit the stands until after JFK had been killed. So I think just generally they're like, oh, we shouldn't do this too much more.
Yeah, probably a good call.
Yeah. But yeah, the issue ends actually with like being like, all right, Darklaw has saved the president. Now he has to go back and actually fight Hyena.
That's right.
And it's like him hanging on to the side of the helicopter being like, we have to go take him on. And that's the end of the issue. And we never see the rest because these are all one issues.
Because it's all one issues. It's all one shots.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yep. All right, let's talk about Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Now, what a strange combination. Like, you're already doing Darklaw. Logan's already, Logan and Bruce Wayne are already mixed together. Why throw in this Nick Fury kind of character? I mean, he's obviously not Nick Fury because Nick Fury's in the book also.
Right. I don't know. I don't know.
Like, who is he supposed to be mixed with? Like, if it's not Nick Fury? Some nameless S.H.I.E.L.D. agent?
Maybe. I mean, he clearly, from the standpoint of being like Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like there is the Nick Fury-ness to that. Like there's really hasn't been another book that was like blank Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. up until we get into like the like the late 90s, early 2000s when they actually would do that every now and then with like Loki, Agent of Asgard, or like shit like that. But the classic is Nick Fury.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember Wolverine, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. too at one point, right? No? Am I wrong?
Maybe. No, it fully might be. I'm just like blanking on it. I don't know. Like I wonder if they were like, no, we have to do Darklaw. But Chuck Dixon really wanted to do a S.H.I.E.L.D. story, and that's
fair.
Who wrote it was Larry Hama, who is more of a Wolverine writer, who wrote Darklaw, and then Dixon is more of a Batman writer, wrote Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so this was a weird book. We get a lot of characters in it.
So many characters.
Moon Knight / Moonwing.
Moonwing, yeah.
Yeah.
Black Bat, which is Black Cat and Batgirl. Like, why mix those two? What?
Yeah, sometimes the names are needlessly clunky. You're like, no, you wouldn't say the Bat.
But like, I mean, I don't know. Black Cat, that just seems weird.
Yeah. I liked Baron Zero as a fusion, particularly because like anything that can be like a continuity nod for me, I love. And so like Mr. Freeze originally being Mr. Zero works so well here. Mm-hmm. And it's Baron Strucker, but it sounds like Baron Zemo. And so it's like a lot of things that are like, I like how all of these are playing with each other. Like it's nice.
Honestly, if I hadn't read this right now, I would have thought it was Zemo, not Strucker.
Yeah, if you just hear it out loud, you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's Zemo,
totally
but
Zemo.
It's clearly Strucker. Nuke as a fusion of Nuke and
Bane.
And, Bane, yeah,
which makes sense. Both.
That's a pretty good one.
And then now Madam Cat is what Selena Kyle and Madam Hydra,
and I think Viper.
Okay, well, she's Viper at first, and then she changes her name to Madam Hydra during the issue, right? Isn't that how it?
Right.
Yeah. Because she's now the lead because she kills her father, or thinks she kills her father.
Yeah, because it's Selena Luthor. Yeah, so it's Catwoman and Viper.
But then you also have Catwoman and the Assassins.
Right. Yeah, the characters get reused a bunch.
Yeah.
And then this gets weird because we get Moon Wings and we get all the. I mean, we get multiple Waynes. Like, like is Bruce Wayne the brother of Logan Wayne?
That's what I was thinking.
That's sort of the implication, but it's just. It gets messy because they're not all working together. Yeah. Well, and like it's only if you're trying to like have a continuity between them all, which some of these books try to have continuity. They're like, my boss Bruce Wayne is on the line. Like, do you want S.H.I.E.L.D. breathing down your neck?
What do you think the editorial mandate was for using characters?
I do know that there was a certain amount of like if they claimed them, but that might only be for major characters because I know. When I was reading up on X-Patrol, they were trying to figure out what they could use with Dr. Doom, and then it turned out that no one had called Doomsday. And they're like, fuck yeah.
I mean, to me, I imagine like a bunch of the dudes just sitting in a room and doing like fantasy football, like
Yes.
doing a fantasy football draft.
Oh, yeah, we'll take this one and mix it together with this one. No, we'll take that one. Scratch that one.
Well, and then it gets so weird when you start doing team books and like all the weird continuity shit with some of these characters. Because like when you're just talking about like the main character of a book, it's usually pretty easy. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, we're taking Spider-Man and Superboy and we're consolidating them. And like if they've got their they've got like a rich universe each that they can, kind of bring together. But when it's like X-Men stuff, there's so many of them and there's no like clean, like this all belongs to Excalibur. Like, no, because like they're founded by people who are part of the Claremont era X-Men and then also Marvel UK. And like they're all over the place. And this is the 90s. Let's be very clear about that. And both books or both companies were deep in the throes of some questionable design and character choices.
So would we also say that this is the first like appearance of a resurrected Jason Todd, like even before DC?
Also, yes, yeah, several years before.
Because Jason Todd as Deathlock seems pretty cool.
Yes, that I dig that one.
But Nightwing and Moon Knight, like, that just seems not good.
Moonwing.
Could they not use Nightwing because it's used in Generations?
Oh, Nightwing. This predates that though.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay. Never mind then.
Yeah, this is like 2 years before Generations.
Wait, when did Generations come out?
Generations is in 2000?
Generations was like 9. Yeah, so even more.
Wow.
This is 96, so if Generations 2000, that's 4 years.
Okay. Ooh. Yeah, all that, it just kind of mixed up together to me.
Yeah. Oh, all the Batman stuff in this in general, I was like, it's fine. I like the nuke, like, well, but like the Nuke Bane kind of crossover is like cool. And like I don't know, the Batman stuff being overlaid on Shield stuff just felt like, yeah, let's put Batman theme things on like super spy stuff. And
then Tony Stark is just there as a I'll make things for you kind of guy,
right? Yeah,
Q.
Because they had at this point no intentions of what to do with Tony Stark, because he wasn't a big enough name as a character to immediately justify an amalgam.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. If we did this today, like it has to be completely restructured just because of how popular certain characters have become, right?
Yeah, although I think Iron Lantern apparently was a huge write-in as soon as like this like was announced. People were like, "Oh, do Iron Man and Green Lantern? That's a perfect fusion right there." And I think that works pretty well.
Oh, that works great. Yeah. Yeah, in the second run, and then the history of it, like when they throw in the Human Lantern. So it would be Alan Scott and Jim Hammond, Human Torch, right? Yeah, like that's I like the history that they create just in the few panels that you get to see.
So why don't we jump over? Let's knock out Assassins while we're kind of in the Batman space.
So I have to talk about Dare the Terminator. Like if you're mixing Slade Wilson and Matt Murdock, why does it come out female?
2 X chromosomes.
Oh, okay. I guess.
It works as well as anything else.
I know, but I feel like there should be a third character that they threw in there. Like, but who would it be? Slade's wife? Because she was a military person too.
Well, so it's like the Elektra Daredevil thing is the pairing here. So really, it would be more like who would fit with Catwoman being combined with Elektra.
Okay, but if you're doing Daredevil for that, why Deathstroke? Is there no other assassins in the DC universe they could have combined with Daredevil? Who was the writer on this one?
D.G. Chichester? I don't know this.
I'll go have a conversation with them.
I mean, this is a book where they are given a lot of space to like fill out tons of characters because this is like it's the Raid or Dread.
Oh, it so like, is. You're right.
And it's just like how many combinations can we do? And like we open with Deadshot / Bullseye getting murdered immediately, and then they just like work their way through like fun combos of like lethal characters to get to the big question, which I think is a fucking dope amalgam right there.
I love the big question so much. I wish there was more like that I could have read about him.
Yeah, like he fits so well in either universe, like but especially Batman stuff. Like man, like this is such a good version of the same question theme of like the Riddler, but having his own kind of distinct style and being more of like a kingpin. Yeah. But Batman actually could use a character like that pretty well.
And the fact that they didn't come up with a clunky like Riddler kingpin like name and went with the big question. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Also, I just want to point out he's mayor of Gotham City.
Right.
Of New Gotham City,
right.
Which now, like, the Kingpin is the mayor of New York in comics currently. And, like, again, prescient stuff. Like, they were testing out ideas in these books and seeing how they, like, fit and, like, seeing, like, what they could, like, kind of work with and play with as ideas. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so then we get a Cheetah Kraven the Hunter mashup.
Makes sense.
Which, yeah, that's fine.
Jungle theme, that's all they needed.
Yeah, we get Manhunter / Cable. This is one where Cable just where a character just gets used a bunch of times, like,
because he's in X Patrol.
Yeah,
twice, kind of.
I mean, it is also Cable though, so it's like, well,
different time periods
of any character. He's the most likely to be all over the place. But honestly, Strife would be the way to go because Strife has the same kind of crazy shoulder pad shit that '90s Manhunter.
That's
had.
true. It would have been better if it was Strife instead of Cable. I mean, I guess you could just say it is Strife. I mean,
I guess you could say. But he's called Wired, which
definitely lends to Cable, not not Strife. But yeah, I mean, other than the book, just I think it just kind of looks cool. There's not much else going on for it.
Yeah, they just work their way up, and then Dare kind of dies in this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess the reason they would have used Deathstroke, the Terminator, is because this was the era when they first tried to make Deathstroke a protagonist. Like, he had his own book at this point. So maybe there was just a general desire to do that. And, like, they're like, Assassins would be a fun name for a book. And we can do Deathstroke and Elektra. Who merges?
Doesn't she kind of look like the one warrior woman from Wildcats?
Like Zealot?
Is that what it's called? Is that what her name is? Yeah. Like with the white hair.
Yeah, white hair with a big sword and a red bodysuit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which that design, like, because it also looks kind of like Glory, which is just like a slightly more Wonder Woman / model version of Zealot. That look just seemed to be really popular in the 90s.
Yes, very.
But yeah, I don't have a ton to say about Assassins because it's just like, can they get to the top? They actually go deeper into their backstories than some of the other books do. Like Dare having like been blinded and the horns are like surgically attached to her head and whatnot. But I don't know. This also was an era, at least for me, when I was first getting into these books. I was coming as a Marvel fan, and so a lot of these books were how I found out about DC stuff, and then like went and learned about it.
Oh wow, that's the opposite for me. I was more of at this point when this came out, I was a DC person, so I learned more about Marvel stuff.
Hey, two great tastes. Tastes great together.
Where do you want to go to next?
Why don't we talk about Spider-Boy? Spider-Boy is probably my favorite book in this run. I partially just because I love Superboy lore stuff, and I love Spider-Man. It's a good book. It's drawn by Mike Wieringo, who is an amazing artist, and unfortunately has passed away. I love it. It's got so many nerdy references. It opens like with him fighting Bizarnage, and it just never stops. Like it's just crazy from start to finish.
With great power comes great possibilities. Ah.
He's teaming up with the Challengers of the Unknown, so we get like them set up in this era, and then they later get their own book in the next series.
Which Challengers of the Unknown is definitely a Fantastic Four and Challengers of right.
Oh, sorry, Challengers of the Fantastic. Yeah.
And so the fact that they have so much of the like Challengers, because the Challengers of the Unknown and Superboy don't ever really mix, but Fantastic Four and Spider-Man do.
Well, and they've had, well, you know what, I was about to say they've had like stuff with like the with Cadmus, but I'm like, no, I think actually this is making me think that more than actual.
I mean, this Challengers of the Fantastic definitely seems like or at least this facility that they're at, it seems more like Cadmus and what's the Baxter Building kind of like thrown together. It's all the scientists of the world kind of in this one building.
Right, and actually we see that in this. All the scientists are here. We get Ray Palmer, Hank Pym, Otto Octavius. They're all around. This is written by Carl Kiesel, who was writing Superboy at the time. So, you know, I think there's a lot of like... And also, Carl Kiesel is a giant Jack Kirby nerd.
Oh, okay.
Like, later with Tom Grummett... First of all, in Superboy, there's a whole like subplot where Superboy basically turns into Commandy, and then later on when they did the book Section Zero, it's like a love letter to like Jack Kirby style Fantastic Four. So like they're big fans of like any kind of like Jack Kirby, man of science, you know, science hero type adventure stuff. which fits the overall vibe here. Speaking of Jack Kirby, the Spider-Boy gun. That's a thing that Jack Kirby's original design for Spider-Man had that they didn't use because they went instead with Steve Ditko stuff.
Oh, wow. Well, didn't they end up using a gun in Spider-Man Noir, right? Doesn't he have a web shooting gun? The original Noir?
That does not sound wrong, but also came after this.
Yeah, no, exactly. But would both been inspired by Kirby's original design for using a gun.
He's got a gun. I'm not sure if it's a web gun. 'Cause mostly how I know Noir, aside from Into the Spider-Verse, is from the Shattered Dimensions video game.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But let's see. So we got... I have never been clear on why Johnny Storm has a tiny clone of Johnny Storm in this.
I have to assume that's a challenge of the unknown kind of thing.
It's gotta be.
It's gotta be.
Because it's real weird. I love that Dabney Donovan's around because he's a fuckhead, and it's great. Oh, yeah, Kirk Connors is also here because all the scientists are here.
All the scientists. So, talking about clunky names, how do you two feel about Uncle Jen?
So, all right. There's so much I like going on with this that, like, the fact that it is, like, a weird way of phrasing things, it's like, all right, it's General Thunderbolt Ross, all right.
Yeah.
But it's there, for me at least, it helps get to a couple of, like, really fun continuity nods, and the fact that it rhymes with Uncle Ben is like, okay, yeah, all right, whatever. So, like, because we get the origin story for him, and you know, it's very Superboy of the '90s, where it's like it's a clone to recreate the Super Soldier, and in this case, it works because Super Soldier's been gone for so long that they're like, how do we do this? And they decide on using gravity-based powers, which is like the telekinesis of Superboy at this point, and that's why I really dig how he's got like thick boots and he can like run along the side of buildings and so forth, unlike Spider-Man, where it's like he needs points of contact and like he can only use like thin fabric and whatnot. Like, it's like, no, he's actually just like changing the angle of his gravity,
right?
Which I think is such a cool element of that. But so it's the basic Superboy kind of story, except instead of him being freed and like going off on his own, like they actually like take him in, and we've got General Thunderbolt Ross like trying to teach him to be a good boy, and then he dies the way like the general always will. It's implied that the DNA base stock for him, or for Spider-Boy, is the Peter Parker base stock, the scientist who dies in the creation of Spider-Boy. Right. So then when we get his secret identity, he has the last name Ross because of General Thunderbolt Ross, but he takes the name Pete, and then he gets to be Pete Ross, Superboy's best friend. And I love that.
They thought really hard about these.
Like, anytime where you can get to these kind of like Byzantine architectures of comic book references, I'm all here for it. Like, when it feels like that some thought was put into it, and this felt like thought was put into it, I'm like, yes, bump it into my veins, guys. I love how they keep talking about the Insect Queen. I love that we get Rex Leach as a setup here with Betty Brant, which is like, yeah, that makes sense.
So I am not familiar with Rex Leach and Roxy Leach.
So they were, it was his talent agent for the Superboy books in the 90s.
Man, see, I remember reading those books, but I do not remember these characters. But makes sense.
Yeah, like they were like just very scummy, kind of like, you know, every now and then they'd have moments of being like actually not bad people, but like it was always about like booking Superboy as a celebrity for things. They were the ones who, like, when Superman was dead, bought the trademark to the name Superman so that that Con-El, like the kid, the clone, could be legally Superman. And then like when Superman came back, they like tried to sue him, and like there was a whole thing. And when Superboy figured out that he wasn't really a clone of Superman, they like worked out a deal, and they sold the rights to the Superman name back to Superman for $1.
Man, the 90s.
It's so weird.
Fun times.
I did love the whole, like, the anticipation of the Insect Queen, and especially how that ends up being Mary Jane Watson, because of how the first introduction of Mary Jane Watson was very, oh, you're going to go on the date with my friend's daughter or friend's niece or whatever, right?
Yeah, and like that's a fun element there, you know, and it being Mary Jane is great because, you know, it was Lana Lang, so we get the redhead kind of connection right there. King Lizard people need to remember that King Shark was a Superboy villain first before he was anything else.
He's definitely everywhere now.
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense because Superboy was always on the beach and stuff, right? So thus King Shark. Okay.
Right, and it was like the a demigod of a Hawaiian shark god was the basic idea. And Superboy was like set in Hawaii and like actually dealt with like Hawaiian mythology a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at some point we'll talk about the 90s Superboy run, and there's lots of characters that are references to it all, and lots of things set around like volcanoes and stuff because it's all in Hawaii.
I can't wait to listen to you guys talk to that one.
We get the New York Special Crimes Unit, which is just like a cavalcade of references for the different books. One of which is like kind of sort of Dan Turpin combined with Bucky Barnes.
Yeah, sure.
Being called Brooklyn Barnes. Flash Thompson's there. Captain Makoa, who's like the police captain in the Superboy books at this time. But yeah, King Lizard shows up. He's been doused in pim particles, so he's just getting bigger as they fight. And so Spider-Boy grabs the white dwarf technology from the Atom and shrinks him with that.
Curse you, Spider-Boy.
Spider-Boy!
That's a way to not too wait.
Or the fact
a name.
The fact that his like extra nickname is the Mall Crawler. Like, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, lots of good fun puns. I haven't said this yet. I love the Spider-Boy costume. I think it's really fucking
It's
cool.
so good.
I want that jacket.
Yeah.
It honestly, all the excesses of the Superboy costume are toned down at the appropriate levels. I mean, the Mike Wieringo art is also just like makes it look good in general, but like it's so cool. Like, and it is a nice fusion of specifically like the Ben Reilly Spider-Man elements, like the things like the finger gloves and so forth. Like the way it was like individual fingers and then like a blue hand base.
Right.
If you look at the Ben Reilly costume, you're like, okay, I see like specific spots where the differences are being applied here, which I think is cool. The all the belts that Superboy had actually having function on this one are good. Like instead of just like random belts on his leg, it's like, oh, that's his holster. Okay, cool. I love Spider-Boy being friends with Doc Ock. Like,
yeah,
wonderful setup right there.
And then you had, was it this book? Yeah, it was this book where you kind of have a crazy Reed Richards, right? Like he's been...
Yeah. So Dabney Donovan has manipulated him. And it's implied that Dabney Donovan is also responsible for Peter Parker's death and for the release of Spider-Boy prematurely.
That's right.
So yeah, he's like, I've infected him with evil DNA. And I think that Dabney Donovan is like mad scientist who shows up and causes shit in the background all the time. And particularly was showing up a lot in the Tom Grummett and Carl Kiesel, first the Superman books that they were working on, and then on the Superboy stuff. And I think that ties in a little bit with Paul Westfield, the original clone stock generator for Superboy, be like going crazy and bad, but I can't remember for sure. I don't know. Suffice it to say, a lot of this is like very similar to stuff going on in the Superboy books of the time, because they really loved all the like all the Jack Kirby Superman stuff that was introduced in like Jimmy Olsen's Pal and whatnot. All right, why don't we shift over to, let's look at X-Patrol, guys.
X-Patrol.
X-Men
and Doom Patrol. Like, why not X-Men and Teen Titans?
Well, it kind of has some of those elements, though, because they've got the X building, which is just like the T building from the Teen Titans. True. Beastling, which is... Now we know him as Beast Boy. At the time, he was still going by Changeling as that one half of the Beast. Like, all right, well, that's a Teen Titans member, and we got Starfire there. I'm going to be honest. When this book first came out, I wasn't familiar with Doom Patrol because there was not a Doom Patrol series at the time.
Oh, okay. And
so I was like, I don't know where the patrol's coming from, but it looks like an X-Men Teen Titans book. And then you find out more, and you're like, okay, I see how it's not quite that.
Now, Pharaoh Ladd... Isn't he a Legion character?
Yeah, there are some elements of the personality that match up to Robot Man.
True, okay.
So there's a little bit of a three-person, but it's mostly Pharaoh Ladd and Colossus. But Pharaoh Ladd doesn't really have a personality like Pharaoh Man in this. Like that's more the kind of curmudgeon-y thing type personality that Robot Man has.
Yeah.
And then once again with Niles Cable, you get kind of like three characters put together.
Right.
Because Professor X is used so many times in these crossover, these amalgams. Like he's used several times.
Well, he has a Professor X kind of vibe, but also Niles Calder always has kind of a Professor X kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I guess that's true.
People compare Doom Patrol and X-Men a lot. Like people have argued that one is a ripoff of the other, and it's Doom Patrol came first technically, but it's like a really tight window, so it'd be very difficult for it to be like full-on robbery, but certainly, they were all guys living in New York, like working across the street from each other for a while. Like a lot of ideas kind of floated back and forth between the hallways
over lunch.
That is true. They were all friends. They all talked to each other,
and in some cases, we're the same people.
And we're the same people. Yeah.
Shatter Starfire as a fusion of Shatterstar and Starfire. That is a mouthful of a name.
No kidding. Also, with some type of connection to Spider Boy.
Yeah. So in the letters, I think they say that at one point. Well, actually, in Spider-Boy, he even talks about it. In a previous adventure, he had gone down to like the Microverse, which was like their version, or like where the kingdom of Tojo Marin or whatever, like a fusion of the Mojoverse and Tamarin, the place where Starfire is from, but it was inside like the microscopic universe. Yeah, like that's where he encountered Shatter Starfire and brought her into the full-size universe.
And you said Dial Husk.
Dial H for Husk.
Which I
so
love.
Dial H for Hero. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's such a great opportunity to have all these references that are going to make it into the mainstream, and no one gives a shit about continuity because they're literally one off. Like, okay, I'm going to turn into Mary Marvel Girl. Fucking yeah, I love it. Here for it.
And then Polaris is Dr. Polaris and Polaris.
Yeah. Then we got another trio with the Elastigirl, Wasp, and Domino hybrid, and I don't know why they put the Domino part.
Right. Yeah.
Just because.
Just because they needed to stick it in somewhere. Oh, it's because Domino and Cable.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. And then the Elastigirl and Wasp, just because they both change shape.
Yeah, they're like both size changers.
Size changers.
Yeah, and like if it's Doom Patrol, the Elastigirl part makes sense. So and like yeah, it is obviously Doom Patrol. Like there's no question about that. Even though there's a lot of like Teen Titan vibes going on here as well.
A little bit of Legion.
Yeah, just that skosh, that Pharaoh lad. And the Pharaoh lad elements being incorporated into Colossus's uniform, aside from the mask, I think are actually like really nice and subtle. Like it's the riveting that goes along, and the fact that the stripe doesn't come to a point. It actually like becomes like the stripe continues all the way down. Those are like the Legion elements, and I'm like, put those in there.
Yeah, I dug the costume.
Pharaoh lad's great. I love Pharaoh lad.
And then I like the change to Beastling's powers or Beast Boy's powers or Changeling's powers of being, was it mythological character or creatures instead of just animals?
Any creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he only does transform into mythological characters
or animals.
I actually hadn't noticed that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I think he says it in the book too at some point. But there's a lot of explaining of every character. Like all these books, half the book is just giving everybody backstory just so you could be like caught up.
Oh, that's what they do. Right.
I mean, it was helpful because again, like I'm coming in, I had no idea who Pharaoh Lad was when I read this book.
I had no idea
because Pharaoh Lad had been dead, and it was like 2 years later, Pharaoh shows up for like Final Night, the event where like the DC in DC where the sun is eaten by a sun eater, and links up with Legion of Superheroes. I'm like, oh, that's where they get the Pharaoh thing for X Patrol. I mean, some of it is just fun trying to figure out like how these like link ups work. And then we get Dr. Doomsday, and I fucking love it. It's so goddamn dumb. But it's great. And recently, with when they did the Heroes Reborn event in 2021, the one where it's the Squadron Supreme characters and whatnot, they fused Doctor Doom with Juggernaut, and I'm like, it's the same thing. It's like, where it's like, oh yeah, Doctor Doom becoming like a big physical threat. Like, all right, yeah, I'm here for it. This one is like he's got the tech armor stuff, and he at a couple spots they sort of imply that it's like the Doomsday body is a carapace that he's wearing, but it's also he apparently got infected with Doomsday DNA, which also works. I don't know. but as a name, like as far as names go, like Shatterstar Fire is a lot to say. Dr. Doomsday sounds like an actual supervillain name. Like that doesn't take work.
No. And
his whole plot is he's going to suck in mind-controlled versions of the non-split up heroes that they make a point of being like second-rate imitations, perhaps, but still powerful. So that's all fun. And then Dr. Doomsday punches Niles Cable real hard in the back and breaks his spine.
Can't feel his legs.
But again, we get a Mary Marvel Girl thing there. And like, I like when Jean Grey has like elements that kind of make her like feel more like the like Shazam Marvel family. Like the original Phoenix costume, if you like step back for a second and just think, you're like, oh yeah, I can see how that's like a kind of like a Captain Marvel costume.
Oh yeah.
And I love it. I just want more. Like I want her to go by Marvel Woman in modern comics, and I want her to have like a little bit of a nod to like the Marvels. Like tie her in. She's the first Marvel Comics character to have Marvel in her name before they had a Captain Marvel and before they had a Miss Marvel. Like, make her a flagship. That's all. Anyway, Andrea.
That makes sense.
Why don't we jump into the other X book of this line, which is JLX. So this one intrigued me because it's Howard Porter doing Justice League stuff right before he actually does Justice League stuff. Like, this is right before the Morrison run with Porter doing JLA.
Oh, that makes sense.
And a lot of these books feel like test runs for creative teams before they would work on books, if it wasn't already the people working on books just coming over. Like, Mark Waid's doing Captain America at about this time. I don't know what the timeline on it for, like, which came first, so, like, who can really say? Carl Kiesel was already doing Superboy, but then, like I said, JLA comes out right after this. So we're getting to see, like, Howard Porter doing superhero stuff of that team style right before he actually goes on to take on the flagship DC superhero book.
I mean, it's the era of JLA that I love.
Yeah. And in the next wave, John Romita Jr. working on Thor Ryan is right before he does a Thor run.
Oh.
So it's just like moments where it's like, oh, are we testing? Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So we get to see the Judgment League Avengers showing up to deal with the mutant friends of the JLX. There's so many characters to talk about here just for a moment because there's just a bunch. Super Soldier, not a big surprise. Darklaw being there, not a big surprise. Those are the ones we know about. I love the Captain Marvel look, like the fusion of Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel. And apparently his magic word is Kree.
I mean, the green outfit does look pretty awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Particularly the white bodysuit with the lightning bolt, I think is really cool. I really dig that all. Angel Hawk, talking about names that are like, why would you go with that? like, why would you ever pick that name? Why did you say that name?
Yeah, I kind of feel like Angel would have been just fine.
Yeah, or Hawk. One or the other.
So if you're looking at the Wikipedia entry for this, you have Goliath and Hawkeye, which is Oliver Queen and Goliath mixed together, which is also Clint, and then Connor Hawk and Clint mixed together for Hawkeye.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that they went with the Clint Goliath as opposed to the Hank as Giant Man thing. I'm not sure, because that's the Hank Giant Man costume though from the 90s.
Oh,
like it's like clearly it's very close to what his then Avengers costume was as Giant Man. Yeah, and then we get a Mockingbird, Black Canary hybrid.
And then so the whole Gambit and Obsidian mixed together, like I get it because it gives you a way for Runaway to be able to make out with her boyfriend.
Right.
But like Obsidian and Gambit seemed like a stretch also.
It's a weird choice. I like honestly, if I was gonna mix anyone, I would mix Obsidian with Quicksilver and then have Jade be mixed with Scarlet Witch, but they did Quicksilver with Impulse here. And Mercury looks cool. Like, Impulse is a great costume, and to give him a blue and white color scheme is just fucking dope. Like, there's nothing else you can really say about it. It was a good costume. The palette swap is still good. Like, that one's just fine right there. I don't know. Obsidian was on the team at the time, so it may have made sense that it's like, all right, he's on the Avengers at this exact moment. Or not the Avengers, the Justice League at this exact moment. So use him, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best. And then, like, Gypsy being combined with Rogue is also, like, kind of a weird mashup right there. Ray being combined with Apollo being Ray and Cyclops, I think, works well enough from a design standpoint. This is like the 90s Ray costume is a very pouchy kind of look, which fits with X-Men looks pretty well.
And when I first read this all those years ago, I always thought that the Ray that they were mixing with was the one, was it Light Ray from the New Gods? Oh yeah. Yeah. Is that his name, Light Ray?
It is Light Ray, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I always thought it was, and then realizing that it's the Ray.
Right,
Yeah. Makes a lot more sense.
Particularly the 90s Ray, who was taught to believe that exposure to sunlight would kill him. And it was actually like, no, it gives you superpowers. Oh. Those lying nuns.
Those lying nuns.
We got Firebird, which is Phoenix combined with fire. It's a pretty straightforward one right there. And that costume's a really good fusion of like the Phoenix design with the fire outfit, which was like the green with like a little bit of like white fire trim to it. So it looks pretty good. I'm surprised they don't have an Ice Maiden / Ice combined with Ice Man character.
Oh yeah.
Like that feels like a no-brainer especially if you're gonna have like Firebird there.
Did they use ice later on?
It might have been in the second.
Maybe the second one. I thought I remember seeing ice somewhere, but it's definitely not with Ice Man, like you said.
Yeah, it would feel like a no-brainer here because like some of these are just like here's the really obvious one, like the Mariner, which is Namor and Aquaman together, and it's just blonde Namor.
Yeah.
With a cool goatee and an anchor axe.
Oh god. With the chain.
The edgy 90s.
Edgy 90s. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have a big problem with his design. It's just like it's fine, you know. Like I generally prefer either the Aquaman or Namor designs more, but this one is fine. You know, it's fine.
It's fine. It's just fine.
I mean, he's just Namor. Like it's just Namor. Like you barely care about any of the Aquaman stuff for this character here, and it's Namor with that tenuous connection of Namor being a mutant, which I always find like a little bit weird.
I always find that interesting that they always throw that in there.
Every time it comes up, it's like, all right, like there are good moments, like Planet Size X-Men with him like being like, all right, so if you want an alliance of Krakoa and Atlantis, like, what are you going to give me, Charles? Like, I dig those kind of moments there and, like, kind of acknowledging... I don't know. It's fine, but it's also, like, he's such a pre-existing character. Like, he never is going to feel like an X-Men to me.
True. Yeah, no, he's never going to feel like an X-Men. Even when they tried to do part of the... What was it? The island that they had off of San Francisco. Like... Utopia, yeah. Like he was there a lot when at the beginning of that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was like part of the Phoenix Five, and
yeah,
which is like, yeah, let's have a character who is really fucking powerful become even more fucking powerful. Okay, cool.
Cool.
We've got Night Creeper, which is a pretty standard name kind of combination of Nightcrawler and the Creeper. That's fine. We got the kind of color scheme of Creeper. Sort of like Creeper's like red, yellow, and green. Normally he has yellow skin, making this one have blue. It's fine. The look is fine, and then he's an asshole.
And as much as I love like the Kurt Wagner like personality, I love that they used the Jack Ryder like the Creeper personality in this. Like it just fit so much better.
Yeah, there's more to play off with because he's a prick.
Yeah.
Also, he has like concern for self-preservation. So like later on where it's like, I'm sorry, you want me to teleport where? It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then we got Mr. X, who is, I guess, kind of a Maxwell Lord in this persona. If I had to like throw out an idea there, he looks like Tony Stark. He's telepathic. And then we find out that he's actually Martian Manhunter and a Skrull and kind of Bishop.
Yeah, with the M in his... Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
You're
was
right.
was the M just supposed to be for Martian? Or he's a Skrull, so it doesn't make any... I don't know.
Yeah, or is he a mutant from the future? I don't know.
You're right. This is fantasy football. He's got all the names up there on the whiteboard.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
like,
totally.
Yes. Here we go. This is how we're going to do this. Give me all the names from all the superheroes that we have and put them together.
Larry Hama had the first pick, and he's like, I take Wolverine.
And Chuck Dixon's like, you guys know I'm Chuck Dixon, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. Well, how about this? He can take Wolverine. You get Bruce Wayne.
Boom. Look at that.
Anyway, so they go down to Atlantis, and they encounter... And this is one I love. Will Magnus and his Sentinels. I fucking adore it, because Will Magnus is such a... like, at this time... Like, who knows about the Metal Men? Like, they're not 90s cool. Like, they're barely talked about in the 90s. The only time it really ever comes up is in Kingdom Come, where, like, it's at, like, the Metal Man alloy is fighting the Parasite, and that's, like, when the Kansas incident occurs.
Yeah.
So, at any time in the history of DC, was Will Magnus a bad guy?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so it's just they needed someone to mix with Ball over Trask, and they came with Will Magnus.
Right, but taking the fun part of him being Magnus, and then at this point Magneto being Eric Magnus,
making them brothers.
Yeah, like I thought that was kind of fun. And so, all right, so here's like a weird part here. This issue is co-written by Gerard Jones and Mark Waid. At some point, we'll probably have to do an episode talking about Prime, which is a character created by Gerard Jones. Gerard Jones is, I believe, currently in prison for possession of child pornography.
Wow.
So, yeah, kind of uncomfortable talking about that part. And he wrote a bunch of stuff in the Amalgam stuff. He also wrote Magneto and the Magnetic Men, which is one of the justifications for, all right, let's have the Magneto stuff be around for all the mutant books here. It's a real fucking gross. When I found out like why Prime is never used anymore, I was like, oh, god damn it.
Oh, it's the worst.
That's
gross. Oh, that's terrible.
But here he's the creator of the Sentinels. That makes as much sense as anything. I like Jocasta being like reframed as like a little human-sized Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. I don't know if she's a reference to a DC character besides.
So it says that she's partly in the Wikipedia. It says she's partly Millie the model also.
Okay, yeah,
sure. And Platinum from the Metal Men.
I could see that, but then we have a much more direct Platinum analog when we
get to the Magnetic. Yeah, Magnetic Men.
Yeah, and like it gets so weird because then there's like all this like lore stuff that was put out there, like trading cards and stuff that have contradictory information,
which also like has some of the only images of some of the characters that are mentioned, right?
Right. Yeah. So like the whole line is weird and not really meant to be like, oh well, but how does this work? Because it really doesn't. Like,
don't think about it too hard.
Even within individual issues, it doesn't always work. So, especially not if you're like looking between different books. But there is a little bit of continuity particularly between books that like writers worked on together. So like Gerard Jones writing this and also Magneto and the Magnetic Men, they make a specific reference to the fact that Will Magnus is like over in Atlantis at this point. And like because it's all being written by, shared population.
Right.
So when you get too far afield and you have books written by totally different people who just didn't talk, that's where it gets like a little bit more like, wait, why is that Charles Xavier and also that Charles Xavier and that Charles Xavier?
Because we can.
You get a Professor X and you get a Professor X.
I mean, like you were saying though, that this is around the time of the X-Men 90s cartoon. He's a super popular character, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Magneto and the Magnetic Men because they fight the Sentinels, and then Mr. X reveals himself to actually be a Martian, and then it's like we're gonna go save mutantdom, and that's the end of the show. Magneto and the Magnetic Men. So this is around the time that Magneto was being rehabilitated for Age of Apocalypse as a hero. People were like actually trying to do stuff with him as like a heroic character. Let's invert it. I liked it. I love the fact that the Magnetic Men are all based on the original Brotherhood of the Evil Mutants. Like it's so fucking fun.
But then they throw in so many other mixes too.
Well, it gets really weird when you look at the second issue.
It's true.
But the first one, it's a fairly straightforward, like 1-to-1. It's, like there's some weirdness, like Cobalt is mastermind technically. And they're like, you've got the best mind. And at one point he's like, if I master my mind or something like that. But there's lots of like little like line references like that all throughout everything. But, like to call attention to like what thing that they're all coming from. But I really enjoy just like like going with this sort of like layout where they were going to do each metal was going to be a magnetic metal, and then they realized that there's only like 3 base metals that are magnetic. So they were like, all right, what if we supplemented the ranks a little bit? Because like otherwise you just have iron, nickel, and cobalt. And
what's the name of the thing that makes the metal men work? It's the something meter or something like that. It's the device that Will Magnus created that makes the metal men work, and then they gave it they added magnet to it for this.
Right.
Oh, I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, deep comic love. A lot of these spots here, and then you've got Sinestron, which is so much. It's a very 90s design for a character right there.
Yeah.
Because he's Simon, right? And combined with Sinestro, right. But then a robot?
Right. But in a robot.
Yeah.
Because everything was robot.
Yeah. I love I mean, I actually really like the metal men, or pardon me, the magnetic men designs. I really like Antimony who is clearly Scarlet Witch combined with Platinum. Bismuth as a Toad character is a lot of fun. I really like Cobalt's design too, and like that. Me saying that, but also acknowledging that he's Mastermind makes me mad. And like you got a little bit with like the collar kind of looks like Mastermind's like weird like cloak that he would wear, but there's not a lot really going on that really feels like Mastermind. We've got a Psylocke. Psylocke and Katana as a Fuse character shows up at the very beginning.
You know, I don't think I'm very familiar with the character of Mastermind.
Well, so Mastermind, outside of his initial appearances as like one of the founding Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, his whole deal is that he creates illusions for people. And so his biggest arc is in the Dark Phoenix saga. He's the one that convinces Jean Grey that she's part of the Hellfire Club and that she should, you know, like smack around her Black Handmaiden, who happens to be Storm, and like has this like whole like weird mind rape kind of story to him.
Okay.
There's no Mastermind story that isn't like a little bit creepy.
I mean, when it comes to powers like that, I would imagine not.
Why don't we move on over to Speed Demon, which is my least favorite of this entire run.
Least favorite?
What?
Least favorite. It's the coolest design. Like, the design is fucking amazing. Like, it's Ghost Rider and Flash, and you're like, yep, that sounds awesome. He's got a flame trail. That sounds awesome. The Etrigan shit, it's too much. It's too fucking much.
Honestly, I don't think I even remembered that it was Etrigan until this read. Like, I always just remembered it being Ghost Rider and Flash.
As soon as I saw his dialogue, I was like, oh, snap, it's Etrigan.
Yeah. Like, and that's how you get like the sort of like spikiness to his face and whatnot, which makes him kind of look like what was it, Vengeance, like the spin-off Ghost Rider character that had like the spiky head. You know the edgier Ghost Rider. I just think it's too much on that all. Like, it's like kind of fun having the design for like the look of the character is great. Like taking the Johnny Blaze style Ghost Rider costume and making it red and having it being a running theme. I think that's all really good. The rhyming stuff drove me kind of crazy, and I'm like, how does that even like tie it all in? Like, it just seemed like an extra detail. But more that I just don't think the writing in this issue is very good. Like,
who's the writer?
It's gonna be someone I like. No, it's Howard Mackey.
Okay.
So, no, I'm allowed to say he's not good. You know, it's fun when we get to like the circus that they're at, and it's like it's Blob combined with Chunk, and then I don't know who Miracle Man is, not Miracle Man, Mr. Miracle is combined with, and then Oberon is combined with Puck.
Oh, it's such a good two.
That one's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1-to-1 right there. And I mean, then we get to speaking of Speed Demon himself, like the Blaze Allen. I like that name. Like,
yeah, that's a good name.
It's a good name. And then you get the Wally West, Danny Ketch character, the second Speed
he's
Demon.
just Wally West though, and they missed not like when he shows up later as a Speed Demon. Like, I'm here for the design of, we're going to take the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider and put the Wally West color scheme on it. I think that's a good idea. Why the fuck does he have a motorcycle? Like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Like, this is demons who run with fire.
Well, the whole thing was that they don't know who the second demon is, right?
Right. But I'm saying, like, if you're going to combine it all, like, why would you?
Fair.
Like, why is he just Ghost Rider?
I mean, he has a motorcycle throughout the whole book.
I know. I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna do the combo, like, if you're gonna do the amalgam, do the amalgam. Like,
fair. I get you.
Commit to the bit.
Commit to the bit.
Night Spectre being Nightmare combined with the Spectre, I think is fine. It's just Nightmare. I love the Silicon Man, the Sandman Plastic Man.
Oh, that's so
hybrid.
good looking.
That's a good name right there. Meanwhile, we got Harvey Osborn, and at various points they call him Norman in the book, and that's when I'm like, oh, you didn't have an editor.
No, it was just get this book out real quick.
Yeah, that was like one of the more jarring moments for me. And also, if you're gonna do Two-Face combined with Green Goblin, like, incorporate the Two-Face into the Goblin design, and not just like when he takes his mask off.
Yeah, that would have been better, but it might have been a little too Eclipso then, like, because if you had a goblin mask with two, like, a kind of disfigured face, it'd look a little bit more Eclipso, wouldn't it?
Maybe a little bit, just from if you took literally the Green Goblin face and just made it have like half a face, it would look like Eclipso there. But I feel like you could, be an artist and design it. Like he's just Green Goblin.
True. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, it would be really fun if you did like Hobgoblin / Demo Goblin for the two halves or something like that, or like half Hobgoblin, half Green Goblin.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Design.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you could do something to have the Two-Face part actually be part of that design and not just he's got a fucked up face. Like there's no story stuff that is related to the fucked up face either. Like it's just like, oh yeah, we needed something.
I mean, at one point in this book, they combined DC's Scarecrow with Marvel's Scarecrow, so it's not like they were working.
You know
too
what?
hard.
But that's also set up in the Marvel vs. DC book because like they team up beforehand.
Yeah, they go running away together,
and it's a bit character.
Yeah, exactly. You have Arrowcaster, which is Speedy and Spymaster. Shouldn't it be?
That makes
shouldn't
sense.
it be Speedy and like Swordmaster if they're at a circus?
Or Swordsman.
Swordsman, sorry. Yeah.
If he was going to be part of the circus, but they don't deal with that circus stuff very
That's
much.
true. I guess I don't know Spymaster all that well.
Yeah, I don't either. But then we get the Green Goblin gets possessed by Night Spectre, sort of, and the word effect that they use to illustrate him being possessed comes in and out depending on which page you're looking at. And then we've got the
Get this comic out as fast as you can.
yeah. Again, it's just like it's just like I feel like you could have been so much more creative. Like the Green Goblin at the end where he has a cloak, like that's already starting to look more like a thing as opposed to just like it's just the Green Goblin.
I mean, I like the idea of the Flash getting his powers from magic as opposed to science. Like what that means, what the world could mean from that. So I dig the idea, but the execution is obviously not great.
Yeah, again, the Speed Demon design, like the cover of this book is one of the most like eye-catching things that they put out there for this line. It looks so fucking cool, but it like the actual story is like a mess of weird supernatural things, and they're just pulling from too many sources because they have Merlin shit, and then they also have Spirit of Vengeance shit. And also Flash shit, there's just a lot going on here to get to that point. And like, and he showed up by like having another Speed Demon show up at the end who is just like on a motorcycle. Like if he ran in like full of fire and with his chain, like I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. We're keeping the Flash part of it all. But like by the end, it's like barely a Flash book in any real way.
It just looks cool. Okay, just give me that. It just looks cool.
I do
concept.
like that the spirit of the Speed Demon or of Etrigan was like the Jay Garrick character. I think that was cool. Yeah, it just would have been like a little bit, I don't know. Do a little bit more. And the fact that it's Wally West, they didn't even call him Wally Ketch.
Well, I think they called him Wally Allen.
or either way, it's like even less of
No, yeah, you're right. It's less Marvel in it.
Yeah, it felt like they wanted to do I don't even know. Like it felt kind of like more of an Etrigan or a Etrigan Ghost Rider book, and then with like random Flash stuff thrown in there, and then all of the naming is just like all over the place.
Okay, it was a cool concept that everyone thought was
at this
cool.
time in history. Was Ghost Rider a popular book?
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of spin-off books. There was Spirits of Vengeance. Johnny Blaze was back operating as his own hero. He would randomly show up and stuff. Like I said, there was the Vengeance, the other Ghost Rider character. The Midnight Sun stuff was pretty big. Like, yeah, 90s Marvel like embraced the dark, edgy books. So like Blade would often cross over with them, and Morbius would show up. The supernatural corner of Marvel.
Okay. So
let's see what I'm saving Doctor Strange for last. So why don't we talk about Amazon next?
So this book kind of really just upset me. Like just in the fact that it's all just a recap of the history of this character. Like I didn't get anything. I mean, I understand that this is all one shots and I'm not going to get any more story afterwards, but like, I just felt like I felt cheated if it was a real book, if it was like, this is you come in and they just rehash the origin of the character.
Up to the point where the antagonist is Poseidon and she has to like justify based on the history.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should note that this is a John Byrne written and drawn book. And about this time is when he took over Wonder Woman, which you can tell from the design elements that are lifted from his specific Wonder Woman design, such as big stars instead of lots of stars on the underpants. I do like this merger, though. Like, I think the idea of, I mean, in terms of power, it's kind of Thor. Like, power of like Grecian like mythological strength combined with the control of weather. But I'm here for it. Like, she's fucking powerful. Aurora kind of feels more like Donna Troy in a certain sense. Like, she's an outsider brought in and made an Amazon.
True.
And the fact that we have Diana as a separate character who is rocking her 90s outfit for the Amalgam books.
Leather jacket and hot pants.
Yep. That's the Challenge of Artemis look that she was wearing when she had lost the mantle of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, because,
which this also kind of feels like.
This book definitely seems more Storm than it is Wonder Woman, right? Like, I understand she's got the Princess of Themyscira going and she's got boosted strength, but that seems more like a bonus of being trained by the Amazons than being...
Yeah, her base form is Aurora being raised as an Amazon. Like, so it's Storm, and then, yeah, she got a purple ray, probably. I think they said on a trading card at some point. But yeah, it's Storm in the role of Wonder Woman, but the book feels like a Wonder Woman book of the time, like a John Byrne writing the Greek gods kind of thing. Okay. I'm down for that. Like, take a character from one line and see how they could fit in a different type of book. And like Storm, she's had some minis, but she's never like it's never been like a Storm book that's just been an ongoing. So I think this is like a good opportunity to see like, would this fit okay? And like, yeah, it does pretty well. I don't know.
It's fine.
Yeah. It's fine. It's sort of like the big thing on this one.
Yeah.
Like the look is pretty cool. Like the Storm version of the Wonder Woman costume looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
She's just as powerful as she would be anyway.
Yeah.
But that brings us over to Bullets and Bracelets, which has a lot more story going on in it, at least.
Now, what they do with the whole Kanto character in this, like, is there a precedent for that in... is that like Cable being stolen from Scott as a baby?
So the character that comes to mind for me is Validus from the Legion of Superheroes, who was the son of Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl, and Darkseid sent back in time to raise as a monster.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only time I can think of that specific use of the like of the Omega effect to raise a character as a villain kind of thing. But I can't say that it has never happened elsewhere. That's just the only time I'm aware of it.
Because, yeah, the only thing I could think about is Cable being sent to the future, or little Nate baby being sent to the future, right?
Yeah, but that, it's fine. So this is the other side of it. So we're seeing Diana, and like I said, she's rocking basically her 90s look, although they add like skull effects instead of star like designs to it to make her on theme with the Punisher, who is sort of Steve Trevor combined with Frank Castle. But it's mostly just the Punisher, right?
And honestly, it's mostly just Diana Prince without powers, right? There's no real Marvel character.
I mean, she even has powers, she's just not wearing the Wonder Woman gear.
Yeah.
Like, she's still like the blessed created from clay by all the gods, wielding adamantium bracelets that was given to her by the Common King
instead of Amazonian bracelets.
And they go on this like whole siege of like of Apocalypse, and so we get a lot of like new god stuff. We've got War Machine combined with the Black Racer. It's combined with Monarch.
Oh wow, that's a lot of characters.
The Black Racer is like a smaller part.
Right.
It's mostly War Machine and Monarch. Yeah. There, they get a boom tube to Apocalypse. We get Big Titania, which I love because it's Big Barda combined with Titania. That's great.
Agatha Harkness. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So Granny Harkness and Granny Goodness and Aga Harkness. That's interesting.
That's a fun one. Thanoside.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh man.
As far as names go, all right, whatever. I love Punisher stealing the dead Orion's Astroforce weapons to fight. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, yeah, that's how you level the playing field right there.
Now, is that Orion or Thorion? I know Thorion comes in the second wave.
Yeah, I think this is just Orion.
Okay.
Like I don't think they do anything to like really like combine the characters. Like, and Thorion, I think they allude to it a little bit in Thorion. We'll talk about that
later
next time. But yeah, we mostly just get a chance to like we're coming for our baby, and then Thanoside's like, fuck you, I sent him back in time.
But
find out what happens next time.
But that was
and we don't.
That was the big reveal. Like Diana comes to it, is like, oh no, he didn't kill our baby. He sent him in the past.
Yeah, so there's actually that's actually a story as opposed to like in Amazon where it's just like, I'm mad at you, Aurora. I'm Poseidon. Grr. And like that's it. Like they encounter a bunch of characters. We get like we get like a High Father Odin character here showing up, even though he's a bit of a different design in the next time we see him. But most of the things like are pretty straightforward. This is what the new gods kind of look like. Thanoside's a little bit different. Granny Harkness has like some Agatha elements to her, particularly her hair. But most of like the female Furies just look like themselves. Yeah, there's not like a lot of like real craziness going on in terms of the combining elements.
We did have Bronze Tiger and Black Panther to make the Bronze Panther. Once again, not what it would be if they did it today because of Black Panther being so much more popular.
Yeah, it's so weird looking at this time, like the snapshot of like what characters people cared about or they were trying to push.
Right.
Which brings us to the last book of this line, which is Doctor Strange Fate. All right, this is what I'm saying when I say that like it's too much sometimes. There's too many things that they're putting together sometimes. I'm sorry. It's some of these books are like this would like the premise is fine when you're like it's Doctor Strange and Fate, but when you're like, can we also make him Professor X
or Jade Nova? Why does it need to be Frankie Rayner? Why not just Jade and Nova? Why does Kyle Rayner have to be thrown in there?
Right. Yeah. Especially because then they want to use Kyle Rayner later.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And then the servant of Doctor Strange Fate being Wong and
Mr. Mixes-Spitlick.
Yeah, I'm never going to say that name right, so I always leave it for you to say. Like, why would Mixes-Spitlick? Yeah, why would he be a servant?
This is Doctor Strange Fate. That's why.
I guess.
Yeah, he's so powerful, and he's like
he's even more powerful than
he forced the genie to serve him. I mean, that works well enough actually with like Morrison's take in JLA, but this precedes that, where like the like all the genies that we see in DC are all fifth dimensional.
And I have to assume that this is Ron Marz and Peter David writing this one, right? Because it ties back into the whole Marvel versus DC so much.
It is Ron Marz.
Okay.
It's also Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. That's crazy.
So maybe Ron Marz just wrote the Access stuff.
No, he's the artist on this one. Which I say is crazy because he's best known for doing like the promotional art for DC stuff, especially in the 80s. Like not a lot of like single issues.
Oh, okay.
Like if you can think of like any retro style T-shirt of Superman or Wonder Woman you can imagine, that was done by by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Like it's I know that mostly because there's so many names.
It's stuck in your mind.
Yeah. So this is where we actually pick up with Axis, who my memory of Axis as a character, I was convinced he was black until I reread the story, and I was like, wait, no, what's going on here? I don't like the Axis costume. I'm just going to say it. I don't.
I mean, it's so 90s. It just is. I mean, it's got the almost same kind of jacket that eventually Superboy Connell has, but just with giant shoulder pads.
It's the giant shoulder pads.
And the giant shoulder pads is what is weird. Now, do you think they decided to do that because of the Kirby design of the brothers?
I think that was also just kind of in. Like it's also like a vest and not a jacket per se.
Is it?
With the giant shoulder?
Why the shoulder pads?
I think that's just the look of the time. Like there were like 90s, like early 90s comics just like loved those big ass shoulder pads.
Fair.
And fingerless gloves and symmetrical patterns. Anyway, so we do get a lot of like combinations here. We get Abominite, which is Helgramite and Abomination combined. Cool.
Sure.
He teleports away, so not important. We already mentioned Mix, who I enjoy. Skulk, which is Solomon Grundy combined with Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that one? Like I kind of just on the fence. It makes sense because they're big. They're both big and super strong, but like I don't know, the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but then the non-intelligence of Solomon Grundy. Like, I just feel like there could have been something better to mix the two characters, or not those two characters.
I feel like they use Solomon Grundy with the like as a placeholder for the Hulk a lot.
Especially,
nowadays.
I get that.
But I'm not sure if this might have been the first time that actually occurred. Like, I'm not sure, like, it's been used in stuff. And then, like, shortly after this, we get James Robinson's run on Starman, where Solomon Grundy has a pretty, like, transformative kind of portrayal where you see different facets of him, including, like, good ones and smart ones.
Okay.
I don't know. I think this was so quick that, like, Solomon Grundy wasn't really on my radar when this comic first came out. So I was like, who is this thing that's, like, the other part of the Hulk? Because it just reads like the Hulk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just white.
All the time. Wanda Zatara as White Witch, I love as a design element. Like, I think it all looks pretty good. But again, we're getting more, characters are being reused all over the place.
Yeah, it's another Scarlet Witch character.
Also, her being, like, super horny is, like, a little uncomfortable. Of them, I actually like Jade Nova the best in terms of personality. Like, she's, like, cool.
Frankie Ray is usually a pretty cool character, I think.
Yeah, and then when she, like, powers up, she's like fire.
Maybe that's where I thought fire was also being used. Maybe I thought fire was part of this character.
Yeah, because she looks just like fire when she's, like, in her power form. But it's because it's
Jade,
Nova,
yeah,
and then but green.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's must have been where I thought it came in.
Yeah, so then we get this whole thing where it turns out it's actually Doctor Strange Fate is actually Charles Xavier. That's a lot of names in there.
So where does this fall into Onslaught? Like, is this before or after?
This is...
Because at that point in time, that's when you, like, the push for Xavier being the biggest threat in the universe, right? Like,
this is the same year.
So is that why he's Doctor Strange Fate? Like, he's the most powerful being in the Amalgam universe?
He is already an amalgam of Xavier and Magneto combined with Doctor Strange and Doctor Fate.
I guess that's true.
I'm not sure. Like, is that why Xavier's mind is everywhere? Because his mind is everywhere and yada, yada, yada. I don't know. I don't know. This is the other one where I'm like, it's just not a, like, very fun book. Like, I know it was important to do a book that was talking about Access at some point to be like, where is he during this whole thing?
I mean, I do have to say that I like the idea of there's one character that realizes that there's someone trying to split the two worlds, make them back into two different worlds, and he's like, well, yeah, what happens to me then? What happens to me in my world? Like that, I like that idea, but yes, the rest of this book is not fun. It's not. Yeah,
the Tuvix part of it is cool. Like, asking audiences, like, if we split us up to Tuvok and Neelix, like, is that murder?
Is that murder?
But I don't, like, I don't really like Doctor Strange Fate, so, like, him pleading, like, don't destroy my world doesn't really, like, resonate. Right. And, like, it makes sense that the magic guy would be the guy to figure it out, but, like, yeah, like, I don't know. Part of it is I just don't like Access.
Not just the magic guy, the all-powerful magic guy.
Yeah. And then, yes, the fact that he's also Charles Xavier. Why the fuck? Just have it be Doctor Strange and
Dr.
Fate. Like, why?
Yeah, the power levels in just those two characters alone, and then adding in Xavier is overkill.
Before I was so cosmically powerful that I could understand the nature of our universe, I already was the most powerful psychic on the planet. But this issue, like, if you're reading it in any kind of order, this is probably the last one you should read of the Amalgams, or the first one you should read of the Amalgams. It doesn't matter that much, but it's the one that picks up either from the end of issue 3 or right before the beginning of issue 4. So this is the one where it's just like, oh yeah, where is Access during the Amalgam event? And that's it. Yeah. It's another one where the concept sounds so cool. Like, again, like, it's a really cool, like, cover, like, fun ideas, but it's just not as fun as some of the other issues.
It's got a lot going on. A
whole lot.
But that wraps up the first run of Amalgam books that came out. So Jay Mike, what were your thoughts when did you read these for the first time? Was it just for this, or had you read
just
it
for this?
Yeah.
Because once again, I was 7. And this is something I would totally thought up when I was 7. What would happen if we made Wolverine and Batman the same person?
Were you familiar with it at all? Like, had you heard of them?
I had heard about them, but it was always like, hey, that's a really cool concept. Too bad no one ever done this before. And then I found out it actually happened.
Yeah, it is really popular online to see people talk about like, oh, wouldn't this be a cool mashup of characters?
Mm-hmm.
And then every now and then you'll see, like I said, it's interesting to see how elements that were played around within these books then got bled into the mainstream books of the time. Like Spider-Man having any connection to Captain America never happened before this. And like having now like Spider-Man being, or like at least Ultimate Spider-Man, and you could probably argue MCU Spider-Man, although they've been intentionally vague about that. Like having those kind of ties, and like even the first Spider-Man movie, like the Tobey Maguire first one, like the fact that it's the Oz formula and so forth, that all feels like parts of this idea of like tying back to military research on super soldiers.
That is, cause we had a well, not a conversation. It was a long, drawn out exposition with a couple of friends talking about like how the concept of having the super soldier serum be the whole basis of having the Marvel Cinematic or the Marvel Universe. That everyone was trying to recreate the Captain America thing, and it led to all these different things happening in their universe. And I was like, that's always been a cool concept, and it's kind of cool to see that it came from here.
Yeah,
like all the ideas came from this amalgamation of ideas and things they put together.
Yeah, and taking those ideas like kind of from the Superman books, like, you know, doing the clone and seeing how those like pieces fit together, and then like when you come out, you're changed for having. Yeah,
because tying into that conversation, it was like having like if you could have like an event like that happen in a DC universe, where like Superman coming to Earth, like having him crash, and having a piece of like the kryptonite thing that came off of his ship be the metal that caused Joe Chill to shoot Bruce's parents, and it all ties together like some big elaborate like question theme board thing. And he's like, it's all part of the same thing, man. It all happened.
Yeah,
it's all connected, man.
Yeah, lots of red strings. Like,
it's still a really cool concept, and I'm really glad to see that it all eventually went somewhere beyond Doctor Strange fate being Dr. Xavier, and they all tied.
Mitch, had you reread these since back in the day? Like, what was your exposure?
I don't think I had reread them until now. Since when they first came out, I might have did it like 5 years after they had first come out, 5 or 6 years after. I just remember like when I first saw that Amalgam Comics poster after, you know, seeing the Marvel versus DC poster, and just being like, yes, this is what I've always wanted. I want the characters to become, you know, new designs and new stories and stuff like that. So because this was literally like when Marvel versus DC is right when I started reading comic books. So it was definitely a big influence on me going forward. And then to hearing like what you said about like the people that were writing these one-shot books in the Amalgam go on to be the writers and artists of the books not too long after this. It definitely shows that people were thinking ahead and like, oh, let's see what they can do with this.
Yeah, it definitely was like a chance for people to test out archetypes and things that like were big story elements that had sort of parallels between them, and see what like kind of clicked appropriately. You know, all these characters, like the biggest thing they're trying to do is like fit the archetypal nature of some of these roles. So like Super Soldier being a Captain America Superman hybrid makes sense because he's your moral upright character. So yeah, give it to Mark Waid. Mm-hmm. He can write the shit out of that. But this first wave of so rereading it, I was like, oh, I am surprised at how much more of like small references I got. You know, like the little name things and so forth that they allude to a story arc and so forth, because I was just better versed at this time now than when I first read these. Like I had started reading DC, like it was really around like 0 Hour where I like started coming over, because it was like Superboy and Impulse and Robin were like books that I started picking up, and then kind of getting into like larger DC stuff with like Death of Superman and all that. And that's, you know, a couple years before this, but this was a big way for me to find out about things that were DC stuff being paired up with Marvel stuff, because it'd be like, all right, so what's that side of it? What's the DC side of it? And it's cool now to see that there's even more that I'm like, oh, I know about that thing now, because either it's come back into popularity or I actually read the book or whatever. Like, but it's, you know, also a lot of ideas are really cool, but there's a lot of 90s-isms going on in here, and like some of it doesn't hold up that well, and that's just the thing. But I am really glad to reread it. We should wrap this up, though, because we've been talking about this for a while. Matt is going to kill us.
Yes.
Sorry, Matt.
And we definitely don't have the ability to do, in the same episode, the rest of the Amalgam books that came out the following year. So we're going to take a break here. Next time, we'll be back to talk about the rest of Amalgam. Mitch, what do you got going on? Where can people find you?
You can definitely come and talk to me on Twitter. I am very active there. I am at the Mitchipedia, and it's all one word.
And J-Mike, where can people find you?
You can find me also on Twitter. I am not that active, though. But you can find me at JMike101. I post funny pictures and gifts when I get a chance to.
As for me, you can find me at Case Aiken. You can find the show at Men of Steel Pod. And if you aren't down for the whole Twitter thing, check out certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of this show. You can find a link to our Discord server. Come interact with us, chat. We're nice. We like talking to people. But next time we're going to be talking about the second half of the Amalgam line. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are J. Mike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo is by Chris Batista. Episode art is by Case Aiken. And our theme is by Geoff Moonen.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Geoff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.